Matt and I had been married for exactly 1 year when we found out I was pregnant. After only 3 months of trying, I took a test, and there it was, two little pink lines, one fainter than the other. I couldn't believe it had happened so quickly. It must be meant to be, I thought. I wrapped the test up in a blanket and put it in a gift bag to surprise Matt when he got home from work that night. As I heard him coming up the stairs, I used my cell phone to record his reaction to the news. I can still hear his voice ring out with excitement. Baby, he was thrilled. Physically, the next few weeks were pretty rough for me. I was incredibly sick from almost the moment I found out I was pregnant, around 6 weeks, until the day I hit 13 weeks. All of the sickness is going to be worth it, I kept telling myself. We were so excited to welcome our daughter into our family. The night before Matt and I went in for our 18-week anatomy scan, we agreed to name our baby Omara Rose, OMI for short. That same night, I ordered a blanket with her name embroidered on it. But at the doctor's office the next day, we received the first sign that our dreams were ultimately going to be shattered, ending in an abortion well into the second trimester of my much-wanted pregnancy. Almost immediately after seeing Omara on the screen at our anatomy scan, our doctor pointed out a bubble that he hadn't noticed before. He said he wasn't sure what he was looking at, and it really could just be nothing, so I tried not to get too anxious. He then said he was referring us to a specialist at the University of Virginia, and we left. The fear didn't start setting in until the drive home as I researched growths on babies. Some diagnoses had hopeful outcomes, while others were lifelong conditions that often led to death. I began imagining worst-case scenarios and tried to prepare myself. I didn't realize we were embarking upon the most agonizing journey to discover the truth. 4 days later at Uva, we saw a more detailed ultrasound that showed a giant mass enveloping our daughter's tiny body. The doctor said the mass was most likely a rare tumor called a teratoma, or possibly another type of tumor known as a lymphangioma. Either one could be malignant or benign, but the doctor said he wouldn't know more until they did an MRI. Devastatingly, he also said whatever the case, we shouldn't expect a good outcome because of the tumor's size and location. A few days after that, we were in a maternal-fetal medicine office at Wake Forest in North Carolina, seeing another specialist. This time, they gave us a little glimmer of hope by indicating they thought the tumor might be an operable teratoma, and they referred us to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia CHOP. It took 12 days to get in with CHOP, but on the morning of our appointment, we sat in the waiting room, both of us so eager and filled with hope. I was 20.5 weeks pregnant. 6 hours of testing later, Matt and I met in a small conference room with 6 doctors. The surgeon leading the conversation looked me in the eyes and said, "We do not believe this is a teratoma anymore. It presents more as a lymphangioma, and because of that, the outcome is going to be very different." The tumor was inoperable and overtaking Omara's heart, lungs, eyes, and brain. She wouldn't live until birth, much less after. In that moment, it felt like they told us our daughter had already died. Omara during the author's scan at CHOP. Courtesy of Lindsay Paradiso, for what seemed like hours, we discussed all of the possible options, of which there weren't many. I couldn't maintain my composure anymore, and I broke down. They left us alone to decide how we wanted to continue, and we just sat there and cried. We left CHOP that day without knowing what our next move was going to be. After going home and meeting with yet another specialist 5 days later, we saw yet again how dire the situation was. Omara's tumor had doubled in size in just a few days, her ability to swallow fluid had decreased, and she was starting to develop hydrops fetalis, when too much fluid builds up in areas it's not supposed to. Omara wasn't going to live, and postponing the inevitable would not only have prolonged her suffering but put my health at risk. The tumor could have threatened my health as it grew, and it also would have been pulling extra blood away from my organs in order to sustain itself. I have tachycardia, rapid heart rate, and doctors were concerned about stress on my heart. Weighing all the factors, when I was 22 weeks along, we made the terribly difficult choice to end my pregnancy. On February 26, 2016, at 23 weeks pregnant, I lay up on a table clutching Matt's hand. My doctor inserted a needle through my belly button into Omara's heart to stop its beating. Without Omara kicking around inside of me, I felt hollow. It took 40 hours and 3 epidurals to reach the end of my labor. I was on so much pain medication that I barely remember when the doctors handed Omara to me. She was lifeless, tiny, and purple. Matt and I sat close for hours as we took turns holding her in our arms and saying goodbye. It was incredibly difficult, but I will cherish that time forever. Anti-abortion politicians try to make it impossible for women to terminate a pregnancy after 20 weeks. There was no way I would have made that deadline. On Tuesday, the House of Representatives passed a national 20-week abortion ban that proposes restricting abortions after 20 weeks except in the case of rape, incest, or the woman's life being in danger. While 24 states currently restrict abortion with some exceptions at some point after 20 weeks, this bill would attempt to do so nationwide. It is now on its way to the Senate. 9 in 10 abortions take place within the first 13 weeks of pregnancy, according to the Guttmacher Institute. When they happen after that, it's likely due to problems in a much-wanted pregnancy, like mine. Fetal anomalies like Omara's often aren't noticed until the second trimester due to screening and testing schedules. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists says first trimester ultrasounds aren't the norm because it's too early to see the fetus limbs and organs with a lot of detail. From the time I learned there might be something wrong with my baby, to when I handed her lifeless body to a nurse in that hospital room in Roanoke, Virginia, 5 weeks had passed. 5 weeks of second, third, fourth opinions of traveling between states of painful deliberation. And 40 hours of labor. And the only 3 hours I ever got with my daughter, Omara. Had a 20-week ban been in place when I was pregnant, Matt and I would have had only 2 weeks to visit specialists and make our decision on how we wanted to proceed. 2 weeks to make the hardest choice of our lives. Laws like this offer families like mine a window of weeks, at best, and say that it's enough time to search for a way to save their child's life, or to decide to end it. If we hadn't been able to adhere to that cruel, unrealistic timeline, and if my case wasn't considered severe enough to be putting my life in danger, I would have been forced to deliver my baby without the doctor first stopping her heart and watch her suffocate to death due to the tumor compressing her airway. Or I would have had to carry her, allowing the tumor to grow unchecked until she passed naturally. She likely would have been too large for me to deliver vaginally, so I would have had a C-section. Or maybe I could have undergone dilation and evacuation, which may have meant that doctors would have had to dismember Omara in order to remove her from my body. These are impossible choices being made by loving and grieving parents. It's crushing that a law like this could have caused my daughter to live a short life full of pain, or kept me from ever seeing or holding her. For me, my husband, and our family, seeing Omara whole and being able to say goodbye was a crucial part of our healing process. As a society, we should be looking at families in awful situations like mine and offering them our support, not our condemnation, and certainly not regulations that will only lead to more pain. The author holding Omara. Photo by Megan Chapman. Photography related. Watch. I have a pre-existing condition. Real people share their health conditions.